what's up, guys? Welcome back to The Collision. Daniel here, and the calendar has switched to December, which means it's time for Christmas movies. Scrooge, A Christmas Carol, the Netflix original take on the beloved Dickens classic, just dropped. I've seen it, so let's talk about it. So like a lot of people, I'm obsessed with Christmas. I love Christmas. I live the whole year just to get to Christmas. And A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens is maybe my favorite story of all time. It's a story I read the original in the book every Christmas. I just love that story. So I'm always going to be interested in kind of a fresh reimagining of the classic tale. I've kind of seen them all. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. And Scrooge, A Christmas Carol from Netflix, unfortunately, falls mostly in that latter category. This is not a great adaptation of the story. There are some moments that I appreciated and kind of some fresh stuff, but for the most part, this movie kind of fails to capture some of that Christmas magic. So why don't we kind of break this thing down? So there's a moment kind of near the start of this film where the Scrooge's nephew is there to invite him to come have Christmas dinner. Again, if you've seen the story or read it, or it's probably familiar to most of us. And kind of in that moment, Scrooge kind of mutters, okay, let's get this over with. How does it go again? The question, Uncle, won't you join us for Christmas dinner? And it kind of almost ends up, although he's talking about in context the fact that his nephew always asks him every year to come, kind of it sort of works as a bit of a meta commentary on the movie that, hey, this is the Christmas Carol that you know and love. There's not a whole lot of drastic changes. Actually, in some ways, this adaptation kind of almost veers closer to the original source material than a lot of them do, like the first Ghost, the Ghost of Christmas Past, who's by far and away the best part about this movie. Great character. And this, like the design, kind of the candle design is faithful to the book in ways that a lot of adaptations aren't. But kind of on the other hand, it also just sort of seems like it wants to change things just for the sake of being different and changing things and being modern. Like Scrooge's nephew goes from being named Fred to being named Harry for reasons unknown. Kind of this random change is just for the sake of being different. But for the most part, this is the classic story that we all know and love. But while sticking fairly close to the basic plot of this thing, obviously all adaptations kind of need to justify themselves by adding something original, something new, some kind of fresh take that hasn't been done. And kind of the unique feature in this Netflix adaptation is that it is a musical. Obviously, it's not the first time that a song has been used in this story. It was done in the perfect, sublime A Muppet Christmas Carol, objectively the best adaptation ever made of this story. But there's music all throughout this thing. Kind of characters sort of break into song at various points, and it kind of express a lot of the storytelling that actually happens through song. But unfortunately, the songs in this adaptation have about the vibrancy of kind of one of Bob Cratchit's dying candles. They just don't work. They lack like the spectacle, like this visually that kind of accompany them. Just sort of ends up being kind of stiff. And just the songs themselves, pretty much every song in this thing is just kind of forgettable. None of them kind of pop. It seems like almost every song kind of goes for that like emotional heart tug kind of tone, kind of slow and real emotional. And again, some of them are a little bit better than others, but for the most part, I kind of found myself almost groaning every time it seemed like another one of these songs was intimate. The characters are getting set to sing a song, and I just sort of almost tempted to kind of skip ahead. So definitely, this is a musical, although the music is arguably one of the worst parts of this adaptation. As far as the visuals, it's kind of hit or miss. On the kind of the negative side of this, the characters, they all have kind of this plastic, stiff appearance that almost seems like it's something that you would see on like a cheap, like kind of Cartoon Network kind of thing, where characters move stiffly and like their mouths just never seem to actually like move in sync with the words they're saying. And I didn't really know if it was like an intentional choice to kind of do this almost somewhat reminiscent of a claymation or something aesthetic, or if it was just poor animation and a bad budget. And the fact that I was asking that question is not a good sign for the movie. But kind of on the positive side, there is some good visuals in this. There is sort of some good aesthetic choices, and particularly with the character designs, which are really good. The three ghosts, and then also Jacob Marley at the beginning of this thing. The design of those characters is really interesting. They look cool, they look unique, they look distinct, and even just some of like the color palette and stuff sort of really leans into kind of the more fantastical elements of the story. So in that sense, I did kind of appreciate some of the stuff that this movie had to offer as far as visuals go. Speaking of the visuals, this is I think by far and away probably the trippiest adaptation that I've maybe ever seen of this story. Kind of borrows a page right out of like the mirror dimension in Marvel's Doctor Strange, or kind of almost like transported, and he sees visions, and it's sort of this like weird drug trip of animation, which I think maybe will just depend on your own preferences, whether you like that or whether it sort of pulls you out of the story. And also just the tone. This is a dark adaptation. Like, again, this is still aimed towards children, and the original Christmas Carol is a darker story that wasn't necessarily just aimed just for kids. But there's some kind of horror elements that this adaptation leans into, like the ghost, like especially Marley, is portrayed frightening. Some of those scenes I think will be too intense maybe for younger viewers, and even like the ghost of Christmas Future, who's again he's always sort of intentionally unsettling, but he's played pretty sinister and almost demonic in a way. Like there's these like pixies that are flying around him, and their eyes are on fire, and I don't know. It definitely leans into some of the kind of the more horror tone and elements, and kind of colors it a bit darker than maybe you would expect with with other adaptations like this. As far as content to consider, the things going on the surface of this, really not a whole lot. Profanity, one of the songs, The Ghost of Christmas Present, is singing, there's a lyric in his song where he says, making life seem like a living hell. So there's that, and then Scrooge, upon, I think, seeing that same ghost, kind of exclaims, "Ye gods!" Kind of somewhat, I guess, using the Lord's name in vain, although I don't really think that's specifically what he's doing. And then there's this maybe 2 or 3 like rude words, like Scrooge calls his nephew an idiot, and things like that. But for the most part, not a whole lot there. Sexuality, no sexuality. Violence, no violence, other than that it deals with some of the themes of death, and Scrooge kind of gets pulled into the grave, and so there's some sort of darker stuff. But no actual like violence that's depicted. Maybe just again, this is a ghost story. This is one of the most famous ghost stories ever told. So spiritual beings are kind of all throughout this. Obviously you have the classic, the iconic, the actual ghost, but there's also, you kind of see kind of other spirits and stuff kind of soaring around. For the most part, that's kind of left in the realm of sort of fantasy, almost leaving you like, was it a dream? Was it not? Although there is at least one, at least to me, it seemed like a allusion to the actual kind of biblical God, where Marley, after kind of making a big entrance and terrifying Scrooge, says, "Sorry for the dramatic entrance. Those in charge insist on a bit of pageantry. Goes with the territory, I guess." So it does sort of bring in kind of the true God into that, but for the most part, it's sort of a fantastical ghost story. As far as themes, kind of things going on beneath the surface, again, this is an adaptation that most of us are already familiar with, and sort of the central themes and messages about kind of redemption and justice and kind of charity, all those things are still present in this one. Still centers very much on like Scrooge redemption story, from sort of this covetous old sinner to someone that can kind of embrace the spirit of Christmas and give to the poor and not be sort of kind of married to his greed. And as well, and I think that message, especially as Christians, remains just as relevant, just as needed, just as powerful as it was like 180 years ago when Dickens first wrote the story. Unfortunately, maybe this is my own personal take on this, but I don't think that this adaptation handled the themes the same, but I don't think this version of it necessarily handled that theme all that well, because even by the time Scrooge is kind of with the Ghost of Christmas Future, the end of it, he kind of doubles down on just sort of being a jerk and being greedy and not caring, and kind of makes the first 2 ghosts that visit him kind of come off as failures. He's almost worse by the time he reaches the 3rd ghost than he was before he even kind of had this journey, and he just sort of doesn't care about the poor, and he's still greedy, and which sort of portrays sort of his ultimate redemption, almost motivated more by like selfish reasons. Like it's not the memories of the past, or it's not sort of the warmth that he sees in the Cratchit family celebrating in Christmas present. Really, at least the way that this film implies sort of his sort of transformation and redemption is almost just sort of because he's scared of death. He's scared of this ghost, and he kind of is bothered that his legacy, people seem so happy. So it almost kind of centers it more on like selfish motivations, which I think is sort of goes against a lot of like what Dickens did in the original. Which isn't to say, again, like I said, the original themes are still in there, and he kind of says to that ghost, if I'm beyond salvation, then so be it, but please, the boy need not die. So you still have some of that kind of the connection with Tiny Tim, but really one of the last songs in this movie, Scrooge is singing, and he kind of sings that he's glad Isabella, which was his sort of fiance that broke it off, that she's glad she found the happiness deserves. Then he sings, perhaps it's not too late for me to find my own. And again, just sort of this idea that almost like he's redeemed, and he transforms his way because he can like gain happiness and kind of gain a better legacy, rather than kind of more of like a spiritual thing that goes on inside. Again, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm nitpicking this thing because I love the story, but it's definitely not as powerful as maybe some other adaptations. So in the end, I wasn't crazy about this movie. I'll still, hey, if Netflix makes another adaptation next year, I'll be the first one to watch it, because I think some stories are just kind of almost made to be retold, to experience from different angles. But kind of the flip side of that is that with a story that has been told so many times, there's really no reason for audiences to waste time with a poor adaptation. And I do think that this is a poor adaptation. Say, watch it. Nothing necessarily overly offensive in this, but definitely not like a hard recommend for me. Hey, let me know what you guys thought. If you guys check this thing out or plan to check it out, hey, and you maybe appreciate some things in it that I didn't see, or hey, you just love the story like I do, and you're just happy to get another chance to revisit it, would love to have a conversation with you in the comment section. And I want to encourage you guys too, if you haven't done so, subscribe to our channel, become a Collider. I got a lot of movie reviews coming up, and we do a live stream every week, and especially going into next year, a lot of big plans for our channel. Would love to have you be a part of it. But thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe and continue to collider through World for Christ.